Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us on today's AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Today on the Nooner, we're very excited to catch up with Todd Shapiro, CEO of Red Light Holland, which trades under the ticker TRIP on the CSE. We're excited to get some insight into the recent moves the company's been making, some good highlights, and get some insight into the mushroom and psychedelic space. So one, if you're out there, thanks for joining. We really appreciate it. I see some comments coming in already. But two, we want to invite you to join the conversation. So if you have any questions or comments as we're going through, you're always welcome to put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them as we go along. So with all that said, Todd, thanks so much for making the time. Really appreciate it. How's your week going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, Mackenzie, really appreciate you having me back here. As you know, we filed our year-end audited results just over a week ago. So, we get settled in, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, we got to file a Q1 coming up. So it's a busy summer for Red Light Holland staff, and I actually am really grateful for our CFO and controller because they have a really terrible summer, actually. So we're always on the move. On a positive note, it was my son's 10th birthday over the weekend, so we had a really wonderful party with him and a bunch of friends. So you got to enjoy the small moments in life too.
That is true. The personal stuff. How did you guys celebrate? Did you guys have any theme, any fun thing? I feel like you guys put out a lot of fun merch.
Well, my wife is very committed mother. She's really amazing to the kids. Yeah. And they did like a Nerf gun theme, and they set up all this target range and stuff like that. And obviously it wasn't the kid he's 10, he got a little bit spoiled. He got a PlayStation 5, so there's a bit of a gaming theme. Oh, I know. I'm like, dude, that's like, can you imagine? So I try to keep him grounded. I try to remind him that as I joke, and parents might relate to this, and we'll talk business in a moment, but sure. When I grew up, my dad was a civil servant and my mother is a teacher, and like literally we got one gift a year, and that was on our birthday. And now in today's world with Amazon and everything just getting shipped to your home and all these, and a lot of it's very affordable, or dollar store stuff that we didn't have accessible when I was a young kid. It's the premise that every day they seem to get like a new gift, even if it's only $2, but it's just that view of entitlement. So I always try to ground my children to say that's not how life is meant to be. You got to work hard for things. You got to, and I remind them this at young ages. And so I never let them take anything for granted. So I'm like that hard old school dad that kind of grounds everybody, which they don't love. I don't let everyone just have a free, great laughing time. I remind them where it comes from, and hard work is at the end of the day where it comes from.
That's true. I feel like in the long term, you do want to remain grounded, appreciative of everything you get, but I think it is great to be able to give the next generation something better. And, I think it's nice to be able to elevate things on that front. But yeah, definitely want to make sure that you're staying grounded and able to appreciate it, because if you're getting it all the time, maybe you don't as much. But that's awesome. Happy birthday to him.
Absolutely. You just don't take anything for granted. Life is precious, but again, we got to appreciate every moment we have.
That is true. Very, very reflective way to start off the Nooner. So I appreciate that. It's a good grounding thing, just even for us. But so I wanted to spend some time. Of course, you mentioned it's been a busy summer for you guys, and you guys have been covering a ton. Would love to just start sort of with high level, kind of some of the things that have been popping up this summer that have really been interesting. And I know we'll dig deeper into some of the specific things.
Yeah, any sort of questions you have, but when it came to filing the year-end results that were audited results, obviously, the company was very pleased with our cash preservation. Still reporting as at March 31st, 12.8 million, over 12.8 million in the reserve. Mackenzie, you've seen it probably even more than I have because of your outreach with a lot of different CEOs and companies. But I think, like I always say, I think about 40 companies went public in the sector when we did. And I'm sure there's only about 7 to 10 left. So, not to say that survival is a business model. You never not want that to be your true business model. But in an area where regulatory landscape has slowed down and we're not seeing as much action move forward as I think anyone would have thought at this point. And I know you speak to like Christian Hagemeyer from Atai. I know you get these really big guests from the big market cap companies as well. But at some point, runway is a very important thing. And if you look at Red Light, because of our cash preservation and our growing revenue, by the way, grew only 4%. But I say only, that was also heavily focused on making sure our burn was reduced, which it was. You can check out our EBITDA loss, which was declined quite considerably from 2.5 from 3.3 to 2.5, and that was the adjusted EBITDA loss, and the EBITDA itself was 6.5 to 3.3 million. So that was down almost 50%. So Red Light has done a really good job, and just pure cash burn. I mean, if you think about it, we had 14.3 million in the bank in at the end of 2024 and 12.8. So really, that's like a pretty small difference of just pure cash. And as you know, running a publicly traded company is very, very expensive. We have audits, we have directors and officers insurance, we have legal bills, we have listing fees, between OTC, where we're on Truff over there, which we're getting a lot of American action lately. So we're grateful to new shareholders, and also on Trip on the CSE. So there's always a lot going on, and constant reviews and quality control reviews and R&D, costs that you don't see commercialization aspects yet, but we're setting the stages for what we think is a really great run. And, I'm here to talk and answer any questions that you have, and maybe some of the comments that come in below.
Yep, that's fantastic. I will say, like you're saying, longevity isn't everything, but I think it does speak to, running a good team. And I think you need to have a seat at the table to be able to make it when things, really reach a higher rate of acceptance. I think we've seen some of that in 2025 with psychedelics broadly. But hopefully we see that kind of continue on as a trend. And I think you need a seat at the table to be able to participate in that. So that's great to hear in terms of the financials there. I did want to start kind of maybe digging into a little bit. I'd seen the news that you guys had done your first legal shipment of psilocybin to the US. Would love to kind of talk through that a little bit in terms of, what that means, how that came together and that got done. And would love to kind of, walk through that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. One of the good parts about being publicly traded is always exposure, and exposure helps for clients and client outreach and partner outreach. And so, it's probably been a relationship that we've been developing for about a year now with Irvin Labs in California, which is FDA compliant, DEA approved, very significant. There's a handful of these licenses across the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And I know you know it very well, but as the line I always say in any of these interviews is, love or hate this administration, you got to love the fact that they are appearing to be very pro psychedelics and pro psilocybin specifically, from Casey Means to the Surgeon General to Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Doug Collins, and RFK. The fact that conversations of psychedelics for veterans have been had right in the Oval Office. This is very, very significant stuff. So, working with the DEA and FDA lab is massive. And our company shipped, 3,000 kilograms of our homegrown psilocybin-based truffles from the Netherlands over into California, which, honest to goodness, is no small feat. This is really, really significant. And I think I had wished that the market had picked up on it more, especially institutional investors, because we're showing that, steps in call it the long chess game, that we can do an important move that sets us up for a later move to hopefully get access to those once regulations come about. And now we're working on standardizing the product. We're looking on shelf life stability. We're looking on obviously, the exact amounts of psilocybin and psilocin content, and how do we get that into one day mass commercialization, sort of from a naturally occurring product to a level that will be accepted by FDA and DEA. So it's a long process still. I don't want to, make people think it's happening overnight, but it is a very important step. And to the best of our knowledge, Mackenzie, we don't think anyone in the world has ever done this, meaning shipping Netherlands based product over into the United States. And I don't even know if it's come anywhere from Europe into for a naturally occurring product on a legal shipment backed by the DEA.
Yeah, I think ultimately a big deal, and kind of does in my mind mark a turn in terms of acceptance, really trying to find that grip in the psychedelic space in the US, which hugely important. Like you mentioned, hopefully we do see some institutional, buzz or pickup at least on these kinds of things. I know it's relatively recent that it came through, and I know sometimes it takes time for information like that or news to kind of disseminate through. So hopefully we see that as well. But in terms of pursuing this further, it sounds like you guys are already working kind of in this one vein, which is important. Is it sort of leaning into this specific relationship with Irvin Labs, or is it sort of trying to continue to pick up other partnerships as well in the US? What's sort of the plan and vision there?
Well, this relationship is quite significant. So in the meantime, we're not necessarily like delving into other areas for that lab-based, call it standardization of product. Where we always dabble and look across the United States is like, what is going on in the state specifically for naturally occurring product for access? Things like Oregon or California, or I guess California, Colorado, Washington State. There's so many now. There's a slew of states that are slowly allowing access. With that being said, they are making it a little bit more difficult for publicly traded companies. A lot of it is you need to be a local resident, and that needs to be wholly owned in order to operate in those areas, or at least majority owned. And majority owned, when you're a publicly traded company, if you're the minority partner, it makes things difficult. You have to be able to report on revenue, and when you're minority partner, it's just an investment in a company. So you can't necessarily report if revenue were ever to come down the road. And at some point, you also kind of want a little bit control if you're the ones with the purse strings, because you don't want someone just dictating where you put the money. So we are always looking, though, most importantly, and I say this a lot, and not that things have been perfect for Red Light Holland decisions, but we think we've streamlined and we've really narrowed the focus on what is working as opposed to what isn't. But we like to learn from others' failures as well. And in such a new market, so many companies are failing. And I always joke where we still have a very strong cash reserve, with so many other companies don't. So we get a ton of calls daily from companies across the United States, across Canada, to be able to try to support their visions. But most importantly, we're kind of really, again, I think, narrowed and streamlined to focus on growing our own vision at this point. So long-winded answer, but we love the partners over at Irvine Labs, and they're really vital to what we think can be a great path to access for those in need, and specifically veterans, because I really think that's the first domino to fall.
That's fantastic. Are there any other sort of areas that you're reaching out to? I think I had seen something around, Arizona State University, even New Zealand. Would love to hear sort of how you're continuing to expand, even if it's, digging in on the U.S. for the Irvine Labs side.
Yeah, and that's a good question. We are getting, again, a ton of different individuals that I don't think we would have got early on reaching out to have our support. So the Genome project out of Arizona State University is quite significant. So they've reached out to us to be able to use our product in the Netherlands for those who have never tried psychedelics before, to be able to basically report back with a special machine that they have, that they've basically invented to determine if it's affecting genes changing or not after the use of psychedelics. So basically, we're a part, it's not an official phase 1 study, but we are part of collecting data and sending it back over to Arizona State University. So it's just another check on the box of validity and credibility. And we think that is just a phenomenal, great partnership. We're getting outreach by other universities to dabble into doing some things with them. As you know, I'm sure you'll ask me about, we signed on Dr. Robin Carhart-Harris. Yep. And I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, with his education in psychedelics and his research and historical information, and basically just at this point, when you want to start working with regulatory bodies, you want to be able to show as a company that, yes, while we have 100% sold in a recreational legal market in the Netherlands, we've done it better than anybody in the world, where we believe we've taken that product to use it as a guinea pig sample for how the rest of the world should responsibly sell this stuff, and back it with data, back it with science, back it with great advisors, whether it's Dr. Robin Carhart-Harris, or in the past have Professor David Nutt from the UK Drug Science, go over our data that we've collected from our microdosing studies. And then that way we can have a list and a slew of backing, not just Todd Shapiro or Sarah Hashkes, who's on our team, saying we're doing it right, but it's the validity from outside sources that are saying this is a really responsible company, and they want to make sure that the access is done properly, and that responsible use, set and setting, data collection, and making sure that we're taking care of humans' mental health is the number one focus, not just selling it like a random party drug, which, by the way, many people are.
Yes, no, I believe that. I do think it also is reflective of kind of a greater desire and a hunger for more research, more studies around psychedelics, which is great. And obviously you want to be a supplier that is able to produce, like you're saying, that trustable supply ultimately. So I think great to see from a trend perspective as well, just that renewed focus.
And Mackenzie, I will add, as important is more research and more science is important, especially on the synthetics, right? The synthetics got to go through a very, very strict drug discovery company, which we're not. We're about standardization and a naturally occurring product. We don't want to wait too long, though. And I really believe this is what the Trump admin is starting to figure out. They're going, there's sadly, very, very sadly, 22 or 23 deaths a week by suicide for veterans. And if you just go and do a ton of research and try to get it perfect, well, are we just going to allow those deaths to continue? Or is there like another way we could perhaps rush this a little bit, because the science is backing it, anecdotal evidence is backing it, consumer demand is backing it. So why are we waiting so long to help people from a God-given product? Why are we criminalizing nature? Why are we waiting forever. Like what is that next? What are we just going to wait another 5 years and allow this to happen? It's kind of ridiculous, which is why the company's taken a stance to be a little bit more stern, a little bit more bold at this point. We feel we have the confidence with this great branding of 5 years being around and doing it right. And now we're ready to share the data we have and to share our voice. So, I appreciate this platform to be able to do so, but I hope we don't just get bogged down in bureaucratic red tape, because then it's just unfortunately not going to help humans in a really terrible mental health crisis we're in now. And it is terrible.
Yes, it definitely is an urgent need, I think, for a lot of people out there, whether they're veterans or just struggling with mental health or things like that. But it does feel like the pace and the interest and the openness to look into things like psychedelics is mounting, which is great and important. But I think it is.
Sort of interrupt, but everyone has their own trauma, and trauma is very significant. For me, and I don't share this much, but I've shared it before. It's not that I'm anti-science, by the way, but when I took the COVID vaxes because I had to travel and do all this stuff, like my body has never been the same since that. And we're learning a lot about mRNA now, and there's a lot of banning going on from the RFK admin and stuff. And I don't want to be polarizing here. I'm just speaking true to me, like what happened to me. And at that point, doing something that I really didn't want to do. I'd never taken a flu shot. I barely go to doctors. Like I've always considered myself a very healthy guy with healthy living at 52 years old, despite the graying beard and stuff. But that was a traumatic event for me, and my body has reacted very interestingly to the point where even doctors have said if there was ever, down the road, another forced vaccine, that I would be exempt from taking it because of what it did to me. So everybody has their own trauma. And I know that when I've traveled since to the Netherlands and microdosed while I'm there legally, it's absolutely helped me allow to sleep better, to deal with the decision I did make ultimately at the end of the day, accept it a little bit better, and help get over my own personal trauma. And that was trauma to me. And some may laugh at that. Some may be watching this and going, what a wimp, whatever. No, everyone has their own trauma. And of course, while I respect veterans and first emergency responders tremendously, they're my core focus to be able to help right now, because they do things that I'm not brave enough to do, and many of us aren't brave enough to do, but we're brave enough to comment on what they do, which is ridiculous. But my point being is they fight for our freedoms. And with that being said, let's help them. But if you have your own trauma, I can't say go do this stuff illegally, but please ask your doctors, ask your medical practitioners, look for facilitator models. There is stuff out there that you can do to try to help. And psychedelics, specifically psilocybin, again, is proven to do that.
Yep, that makes sense. I do think, there's a range of trauma that people deal with. And I think that means, looking at the right tools for them. That can be psychedelics. It might not be psychedelics for them, but ultimately having it as another tool in the tool belt is kind of, can be important. You'd mentioned earlier, I don't think we dug into it as much as I'd like to, so I'd like to just dig in a little bit more. You mentioned sort of expanding the team, expanding a new appointment of a scientific advisor for Dr. Robin Carhart Harris, and would love to just chat a little bit more in detail about how that came together. It seems like, again, important in terms of being able to kind of speak the language of these regulation elements, but would love to hear just sort of more about how that kind of came together and, what you're looking for in that collaboration.
Well, if you follow Dr. Robin Carhart Harris on X, one of the things you'll notice with him is, while he is a doctor, while he is a professor, and while he believes in the medical side of drug discovery and careful usage, he also really wants to explore both paths, and the naturally occurring path carefully to be able to help at the end of the day with a mental health crisis like we've been talking about. So here you have someone with the accreditation that he has, with his historical work, with his respect amongst peers, with the ear and eye of the governments listening to things he says based on backed research. And then he comes to a company like ours. We did outreach to him at first, candidly, and he loves our mission, and he strongly supports it. So I'm excited. I got Sarah. I didn't want to get involved because I talk so much. I don't want to interrupt guys like that, because he's just so vital to it, the information he provides. But we just recorded like an hour-long Zoom link, call it a podcast, but we really did it for the clips on social media that we can share. And I'm really excited to share, 2-3 minute clips and an hour-long conversation that Robin had with our Chief Technology and Innovation Officer, Sarah Hashkes. And one of the things that they really explore is emerging markets and sort of this right to access and this usage that's coming in consumer demand. So he talks of it at very human levels, not just always sort of like from that top elite level down. And that's what we get with a lot of scientists or doctors. Like they really come across sometimes from an elitist point of view. And he is so far from that. He is so humble, and he's got such humility in him. And you can just see he's oozing of ways to help people despite being really just a genius in his field.
That's fantastic. Love to hear that. That's great just to have that more color, I think, ultimately in terms of how it all folds in. I would also like to spend a little bit of time talking about another advisor. I know you have kind of entered into the cryptocurrency element and introducing a crypto advisor. Would love to talk about that. I did really quickly want to just jump to one question that I feel bad because I've been ignoring for a while. That's sort of a little bit off track, but would love to hit it first from Skip, which is, when are Happy Caps grow available kits at Costco USA? I know we talked about this last time. They've done well in Canada. Is that true?
Yeah, currently we're not in Costco USA.
Okay.
The sales cycle in consumer packaged goods, I keep getting reminded by my sales team, despite me opening up actually two big accounts. I did it on my own, but I think that's just my charming charisma. It's different. Like it's a long sales cycle. So yes, through another partnership we have, kits have been sent to them for samples. I'm not sure if I can't say anything material at this point for sure if an account is opening up, but that's obviously a target of ours. We are in Safeways, as you know. We're in Safeways in both Washington State and Oregon, and we absolutely believe we're committed to another order coming up pretty soon, and that will hopefully grow from there. And nothing signed and sealed, but we have email verification that it should be happening. So it doesn't mean that it will for sure, but we believe that's the path. And these are just little baby steps again to make sure that we get further retail distribution in the United States for the home grow kits. We're also very excited by the functional mushroom gummy launch. Again, we're starting slow with it. And this is the lion's mane and shiitake functional mushroom gummy that is Health Canada approved with an NPN number for antioxidants and immune boosting. And ultimately, our strategy will be learn who our target demo is here through Canada, approach big retailers. It's a bit of a sales cycle. Keep that in mind. Do some marketing online, but also then take our learnings and bring that into the United States. This is a great product, better margins for the company and shareholders, also a better shelf life, much easier to deal with. So, let's continue on the Happy Caps brand build and offer great products, which is always the goal.
That is fantastic. All right. Thanks for the good answer. Thanks for that question, Skip. Good to check in on that because I know we talked about that last time, kind of high level. So good to kind of check in on where we are. Sounds like a good target ahead. But then sort of, pivoting back, I think the final thing that I did want to touch on is sort of the relationship between psychedelics and Bitcoin. I know that's been something we've seen across, a few different companies now. Would love to get your insight into kind of, what you guys are doing with Bitcoin and, how it ultimately kind of benefits the company.
Yeah, I joke, as big as a tie is and Christian Angermeyer, I was like Robin Williams in that movie Good Will Hunting, because I'm like, son of a mushroom, he stole my line. And keep in mind, I know that they invested in Bitcoin before we did, but he really started talking about on Twitter about and I follow Christian. I'm a big fan. Bruce Litton, our advisor, is close with him too, by the way. Like they have a personal relationship. So it was very interesting to hear him echo my already press release statements about the ethos and connection between the crypto community and the cryptocurrency community and the psychedelic community. These are individuals who believe in personal sovereignty. These are people who both crave mental wellness and financial freedom. And really, that deregulation, decentralization, that aligned theme is very, very similar. I've had so much outreach since the Bitcoin balance sheet strategy that the company's decided to do. We can talk about that in a moment, but from that cryptocurrency community. And I'm really excited to be embraced by it. We had a really big spike in the stock on the American side. And, unfortunately, I think it's sort of come down to levels where it was at before we made that announcement. But this is a long-term plan with a huge runway and growth of the company that ultimately we still remain very, very confident in where we'll go. Always do your financial due diligence, et cetera. But there is an alignment. And most importantly, Mackenzie, to answer your question, for those listening to the AlphaNooner right now who don't know why we went into the Bitcoin balance sheet strategy, a lot of it had to do with the fact that we were debanked. And it really pivoted. Like, it was a very hard thing for the company, countless amounts of board meetings. How do we pivot from what we were projecting to be a multi-million-dollar revenue generator mushroom farm that was a regular mushroom farm in Ontario, Canada? We bought 100 acres of land We went through, copious amounts of plans and changes and a bit of road work and really starting to go. And we were really, really excited for this. But when we started to apply for our construction loan, because that was always the plan as we disclosed early on, we got debanked by RBC. And then not only do we get debanked, but they also said, we can't give you the construction loan. So then we went to other banks, and no bank would loan us based on the fact that we deal with psilocybin in the Netherlands, even though it's completely legal and everything's backed by legal opinions. So it was all about their reputational risk. And, listen, I think a lot of people know about TD's big faux pas about a year and a half ago now, where they committed hundreds of millions of dollars to a fentanyl scam. And then they got massive fines by the FCC. So I think that also played into it, that anytime you're associated with any kind of Schedule 1 drug in certain parts of the world, that there may be issues. So back to what I'm saying, though, is that then all of a sudden became a really big issue. And we just announced in our latest management discussion and analysis that we're looking now to sell that farmland and sell the plans and sort of make whole on our original investment in it, which we're in pretty high level discussions to do so. But that leads back to Bitcoin. We wanted it as a store of value. We wanted, with regular banking issues, we were hoping to be able to have now, again, this investment strategy within Bitcoin on the Bitcoin balance sheet. And we're excited because we can park some money there. We can accumulate Bitcoin over time up to $2 million for now, and that could increase. And a lot of it too is we're seeing this great alignment with people and people within the community. So it's kind of that organic, authentic way has really helped the company too.
Yep. So it's sort of a natural fit overall, which is interesting. Would love to hear sort of high level also, just because you mentioned the debanking thing, which is so wild and definitely something that we've talked a lot, whether it's in cannabis or psychedelics, a lot of different people have kind of struggled with that. I know that's been kind of front and center with the new administration. Yesterday, Trump dealing with sort of the debanking elements. Does that have any play into just kind of how things are going? Do you have any thoughts, I guess, on that in terms of how it applies to the company at all? Or is it sort of noise ultimately?
We're a Canadian company, so we have to deal with a different sort of government aspect when it comes to banking. But at the end of the day, we love the idea of progressive thinkers. And we're at an area right now, I think in 2025, that we need to be more progressive, all of us, in our thinking. These old school ways, this reputational risk, it's bullshit. You're trying to tell me that there isn't some very legitimate companies that are playing and milking the system. I mean, back to the science stuff, there's a very interesting study that came out yesterday with percentages of all the science fraud right now on the claims that scientists will make just to be able to raise money. And I can cite it later somewhere. I can throw it up on my Twitter, but it was this really detailed tweet or X comment, I don't know what they call them now, about the amount of science fraud where you get these academia type that will collectively put together studies to be able to prove out something that is, can be quite, in their mind significant, but really it's just to raise the money to do so. And we're getting to an inflection point of like, what is real in science and what is not real in science? Because everyone's trying to line their own pockets. And at the end of the day, people are just trying to protect their own livelihoods and they're lying about it. So let's be progressive as thinkers. Again, I come from a civil servant father and a teacher of a mother, who taught middle school basically, and then became a principal. Let's, I'm not from this kind of, big academia or trust fund baby kind of background that's only protecting our interests. I'm trying to protect the interests of the people. And I know what the people want. The people are very vocal. And we got to thank certain governments that are being progressive right now, love or hate them. We all want to be aligned in that decentralization, deregulation. And if it means that there's more open banking for crypto companies, maybe that comes back into psilocybin and psychedelic based companies. And that's only going to be good for all of us and all of shareholders.
Yep. Very interesting. I think, across a lot of different functions, I do think the Bitcoin and psychedelics marrying is sort of a natural fit. And also I think an interesting way to kind of diversify through also, depending on how the market goes for the second half of 2025.
It's a no break. By the way, I just realized I forgot to hook up my microphone. I see you on yours. I have like a better microphone. How's the lighting? And see, is it decent lighting today?
It sounds good. No, it looks good. It looks great. And also speaking of lighting, I also have back here our own little light. This is your light, right?
Yes. That's
if anyone
awesome.
has seen it in the background, it's
the
there.
wisdom truffle. That was a tough project for Red Light. There may be some shareholders who are looking at that and going, that was a bit of a failure. I'm the most honest CEO in the world. We still believe in the ethos in it. And it's a really awesome sort of, we always, everything we've done is try to have this sort of psychedelic theme to it, or mushroom theme. And that's always been the alignment with every decision we made. And at a time when we raised money, we really believed in the lamp. And again, it is this, like, there's connectivity to it in terms of measuring your heart rate and stuff. Those will all be up soon under happycaps.ca or happycapsusa.com. We're kind of merging everything into that website because that's ultimately been our biggest brand growth. And that's where we think most people, we're going to offer more merch. I'm getting a lot of people asking actually lately about, like, we used to sell a ton of these shirts and hats. We kind of laid off that. We were really all over the place early on, and with a small team. And one of the things we realized with longevity is you got to be a bit more streamlined, but we're going to get back, and all on that website, we're going to have more product offerings because we're getting such great amount of people visiting that site and site traffic month after month.
That's great. Well, I'm sure after, again, a busy summer, I'm sure you're not headed into a quiet fall. I'm sure it's going to be busy as well, but hopefully you do find some time to do that, because I think it is great to have the merch element.
When you're the CEO of a microcap company, if you're not exhausted every single day or stressed every day, you're not doing something right, because it is intense. And again, I chose this. I founded this. I obviously wake up every morning excited to try to make a worldly difference. But no, there are no breaks. There's compartmentalization aspects, which I've had to train myself, and partly doing it with a bit of a therapist. But you got to take moments for you and your family. But mostly, it's pretty damn exhausting.
Exhausting, but exciting, because I'm sure it's doing something you love, trying to push something to people that you think that they need ultimately. So again, I think it's great. Hopefully,
one of the lines I've been using lately is, there's outliers and then there's outlaws. And Red Light Holland are outliers, meaning we're doing everything by the letter of the law. We're doing everything legally. We are making a big brand and a big difference in psychedelics, as you can tell by the people we work with, and obviously the great revenues that we see in the Netherlands. And those are pretty good companies. We talked about that most individual Red Light are actually cash flow positive in our last report. It's sort of these corporate costs that can be pretty tough on the balance books, but we are doing it right. And I say that because there are so many who are outlaws who are doing it illegal. And that's, I used to be like, I kind of used to tippy toe around this issue because I'm sort of proud of those people too, because they would at least get access. But at some point you got to get really frustrated. And I am getting to a point after 5 years, because I want shareholders to win in Red Light Holland. I want every shareholder to see shareholder value increase and then make money on their investments. I don't want to see one lose. Ultimately, when it gets to a certain point, it doesn't always go up. But we want everyone to kick ass and win here and support this sort of empathetic, really passion-filled mission. Empathetic, that is. And we are now getting a little bit upset and disgruntled by those who are doing it illegally, with all the mushroom shops popping up all over Canada, with Canada Post, our government postal service, delivering it from door to door, and it's illegal. And why does that happen? And you allow these companies to profit, where it's illegal. And if consumer demand is there, why not work with companies that are doing it so ethically, so responsibly, and of course so legally? So that's one of the things we're really going to try to make noise of in the next 6 to 12 months.
Very interesting. It does seem like, at least hopefully for now, there is a little bit more of that cutting of red tape, making it easier for kind of legal companies to try to come in and provide a better option. But yeah, I think there's still more room to go in terms of.
Yeah, but the issue, Mackenzie, is access to capital for a lot of those companies, right? Sure. So on the public markets, this is why Red Light's in such a good position with Runway, and why we love having a very strong horse in the race right now in the public markets, is because we have preserved that capital, and that was strategic, knowing that it would take some time to get to finishing that regulatory finish line. And that is still on its way. It's still sort of a bit of this fear of the unknown, but so many companies who actually want to do it the right ways can't get capital to get there. And, I can only imagine those who are getting close and then ran out of money as well. So we're just proud that we preserve this money and how cautiously we continue to use it, while always focusing on growing that top line revenue.
Perfectly said. All right. That's fantastic. And I think a good spot to leave it in general. Where would you point people who want to learn more, stay in tune, stay in touch with what you guys are working on, and see any interesting updates as they come along?
Yeah, and thank you again for having me. I can't believe how quickly that flew by.
Time
Um,
flies.
it was amazing. So no, I think ultimately at the end of the day, redlight.co is where you can go and look at the corporate profile. If you want to look at a lot of our products, go to happycaps.ca or happycapsusa.com, including our new functional mushroom launch that I encourage everybody to try. They're sugar-free. Do I even have, I thought I had a pack right here. I could show you it. I don't know where it is right now. I want to
Okay.
reach into a drawer and grab it. They're gluten, they're vegan. They are non-stick. They're like, again, proven to help with antioxidants and immune boosting. Check out the home grow kits. But at the end of the day, we're very accessible for those who are really encouraged by the fact that we're aligned with cryptocurrency and BTC. If they want to learn about Scott Melker and myself and our new alignment there, he's the Wolf of Wall Streets. He's like really one of the biggest personalities in the cryptocurrency space, and how we're working with Arch Public and how that strategy will roll out to commit up to 2 million in Bitcoin, and what that's doing for attention. For example, I've been invited to the Blockchain Futurist Conference in Miami in November. And so I'll be doing a fireside chat where someone will be interviewing me, much like you just did today, even though I speak all the time, Mackenzie. and as well, we are, I'm hosting a panel there. So it really is getting the company incredible exposure. So my point being is like, reach out if you want. Todd at redlight.co, redlight.co. We can always kind of at time, I make back to that tireless, fearless leader in this space. I will make time to talk to you if you really want to talk. And the other thing, we are very transparent. We do at least yearly Q&As, a lot of the time 2 or 3 times a year. So please join the next one and follow us on Twitter. I'm at Todd M. Shapiro or at Red Light Holland. And we're just so grateful for your time. And we love what you do for not only just us, but for the entire sector.
That's fantastic. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate that openness and transparency. I think that's a huge, important element, and I think a really key one for CEOs to have. So definitely appreciate that. Appreciate you taking the time and kind of walking through some very exciting highlights for Red Light Holland. So appreciate there as well. And looking forward to having you on again soon to kind of walk through some interesting new highlights as they come along. But appreciate the time. Thanks everyone for being on. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.